Hello everyone again, and welcome to the workshop entitled Accessing Innovative EU Procurement, part of our EU Landscape series that we organized for the second cohort of startups enrolled in the Synergist EAC program. Today's session will be delivered by Beatriz Gómez Fariñas, PhD, Senior Legal Procurement Consultant at Corvers Procurement Services. Previously, she was a lecturer at the University of Vigo, Spain, and was involved as a researcher in different European institutions. She has wide experience in the field of public procurement law, where she has published several articles and contributed to edited volumes, as well as participating in international conferences. Since August 2021, Beatriz has been involved in several EU-funded innovation procurement projects that cover support, including the EAFIP initiative, Spin for EIC, Prevent PCP, Procure for Health, Protect, Impress PCP, and Shield4Crowd, among others. In addition, she advised different contracting authorities across Europe on this topic. This session will begin with Beatriz's presentation, and the Q&A session will follow, so please prepare your questions. You can also leave them in the chat during the presentation. I will make sure that they will be addressed. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation, Beatriz. We are glad to have you here and eager to learn more about EU procurement. So whenever you are ready, the mic is yours.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much, Denisa, for the introduction, and thank you very much for the invitation. Of course, it's my pleasure being here today. So I'm going to share my presentation with you. Can you?
We can see it, yes.
Yeah? Okay. Yeah. Perfect. Well, so thank you very much for attending this session. And today I'm going to focus on accessing innovative EU procurement. And in these minutes that we have, I would like to first give you an introduction to innovation procurement, so to help you better understand what is this, why we use public procurement and why we call it innovation procurement in certain cases. Then, because I think your main focus will be on, how you can participate in public tenders or how you can engage with this, I will focus on the different stages, the preparation of the procurement, the tender, the execution of the contract, and how you can be involved in each of these steps. And I will finish with some initiatives that may be interesting for you as suppliers and some final recommendations on how to successfully participate in this kind of procedures. As Denisa said, please feel free to ask any questions you may have in the chat, and I will try to, to keep it on time, and we can have later a time for discussion if you have any doubts or suggestions. So let's start with innovation procurement. When we talk about innovation procurement, I always like to start from the very beginning and say, okay, what is public procurement? Because this is a concept that obviously all of us know, or we think what is public procurement, but the rationale behind it is quite interesting because it helps us to understand the behavior and the choices made by the contracting authorities. So basically, public procurement is a process in which a public entity, a public buyer, so it can be a municipality, a department from the government, a regional entity, etc., they basically need to buy something. And we can think about buying something so simple as pencils or computers, or something more, let's say, complex. So, for example, the design of a new highway or the design of a airport. So, of course, it covers a huge range of goods, services, and suppliers. And the differences without a normal procurement, so for example, we need a pencil, so we go to the shop and we buy that pencil, is that the public authority cannot do that. So they have to launch a tender, analyze the different offers that they get from different bidders from the market that they are interested in supplying, for example, the pencils. And then after that, evaluate the different offers and award a contract to one company. So that's very simply explained, that's the difference between a normal procurement and a public procurement. And why is that? Well, of course, because the public entities are using public funds, and the citizens want to ensure that there is some kind of control on how that money is spent and that this is spent in the most efficient way. So that's why they have to follow these specific procedures. Also, they cannot award the contract to whoever they want, let's say, no, we need to ensure that the contractors are trustworthy, they are going to deliver on time, and basically this is very linked, to the efficient spend of the public funds. And we need to ensure that there is some kind of equal treatment, so that all the companies that are interested, they will be treated equally. They will have the same information, the same opportunities, and we want to avoid any kind of favoritism. For example, well, my brother has a company that sells pencils, so I'm going to award the contract to my brother. Well, it's not like that, of course. He has to demonstrate that he's better than the others. And then also something very interesting and very important, at the European level, is to ensure a free market. So there has been in the last decades a lot of emphasis on ensuring that there is a fair play field, let's say, at European level, and that any company from a European member state can participate in the tenders. So they try to avoid that. For example, if there is a public tender in Italy, the companies, only the Italian companies will be considered. No, they want to ensure that also companies from other member states that can perform the contract perfectly are also considered for that contract. So this is just like a basic on why we have these kind of procedures. Of course, public procurement is very relevant, and it's very relevant not only in terms of money, in terms of economy, which basically is around 14% of the GDP. So as you see that the amount that each year is dedicated at European level, but also at national level to public procurement is very important. But also because it's an instrument that not only the contracting authorities can use to buy things, buy pencils or buy the maintenance of a railway, but they also can use to foster other kind of objectives. So you can see more and more that there is emphasis on, for example, the European Green Deal, by environmental friendly solutions, also use public procurement to be more socially inclusive. So we can use this tool, not only for buying things, but also for educating the marketing away. And at the end of the day, what we want as citizens is to have better products and better services, because, well, the reason why the public entities buy things is to provide services to the citizens to comply with their public objectives. And, well, that is, at the end of the day, what we want to achieve. Very briefly about the EU legal framework. So the public procurement is regulated at the European level. So we have at European level already a set of directives that are focused on public procurement. The main directive, the basic directive, is the directive on public procurement 2014-24. So this basically regulates and set up all the rules for the public procurement of the different contracting authorities across Europe. So that will be the basic tool. Then we have other directives focus more on utilities or focus more on concessions, and of course focus on security and defense, because these fields need a specific regulation because they have specific features, let's say, that cannot be all of them regulated in the general directive. And we have also, and this is I think very important to mention, the Treaty of Functioning of the European Union, which is, let's say, the main regulation that need to be complied with. Let's say it sets the basis of the European Union, and of course it's not only focused on public procurement, but it's also regulated in a way. And as I will mention in the next slide, it gives us a series of rules, of principles that we cannot in any case avoid as public entities. These directives basically have been transposed to the different member states. So, of course, each of the European member states has their own legislation that transpose these rules, but also specifies it further, depending on their own characteristics. And as I said before, the Treaty of Functioning of the European Union sets some general principles that, in any case, they need to be observed. And these are, first, the principle of transparency. So basically, when we talk about public contract, a must is that the contract needs to be published in order to inform the market, to inform all suppliers that are interested in participate that they can do it, and that this contract is going to be launched, and these are the conditions and the information you need to know to prepare your bid if you want. We have also the principle of equal treatment. So basically, all the suppliers need to have the same information, need to be in the same conditions in order to apply for the tender. And of course, that is also very close to the principle of non-discrimination. So that means that if you're a supplier that comply with the selection criteria, has the capacity to perform the contract, then you have to be admitted. It doesn't matter if you are from Italy, from Spain, from France, from Romania. You need to be admitted if you comply, of course, with the requirements set up in the tender. And that also means the principle of equal treatment, that it is important that we don't modify the contract or the terms and conditions after submitting a proposal or after awarding the contract. Because of course, other companies may say, okay, but if I have known before that these will be the conditions, I will have participated. But because I didn't know, I didn't. Of course, I decided not to participate. So that's very important. No? The principle of equal treatment needs to be maintained during all the contracts. So before the award, after the award, and during the performance. And then we have the principle of proportionality, which is also a very interesting principle, especially for the supply side. Because this principle, what it says is, okay, you are a contracting authority, you have a discretion in order to choose how you're going to set up your tender, which conditions, which requirements. But don't forget that this has to be in line with the contract. So you cannot ask for a disproportionate requirement that no company or only one or two companies can comply with. No, the requirements need to be in proportion, in line with what you want to achieve, no? So for example, just to put a very simple and clear example, if I'm going to buy ink for my printer, of course, perhaps it is proportionate to us that the company that is going to give me something as simple as ink have 5 previous contracts with contracting authorities supplying ink. So it doesn't make sense in this case. But it may make sense if we are planning to build a huge airport and we need all the design and all the construction process. Yeah, perhaps you want to include that supplier really have the capacities to do that. And what is innovation procurement? Well, basically, innovation procurement is part of public procurement. So it's the same. We have a need and we go to the market to buy something. But in this case, it's a little bit different because what we want to buy is innovative. So that means that or it doesn't exist yet, or it exists, but still in a very limited way. It's very close to the market, but still not there. So basically, there is a degree of innovation that it's involved in order to satisfy the need. And it can be, the degree of innovation can be focused on the product, can be focused on the methodology to provide a service, on the supply chain. So there are different ways to understand innovation procurement. But basically, we are talking about something that we cannot go to the market and buy it because it doesn't exist as we want it, let's say. And here you can see in the down part, no, in this picture, that we have different phases of innovation procurement and different procedures as well. So we distinguish here, and I will refer later to that, on one hand to pre-commercial procurement, which is basically a situation in which the public buyer wants to buy something, but it doesn't exist. So the technology readiness level of the solution is very low, so still we need research and development in order to build the solution. And on the other hand, we have the public procurement of innovative solutions that apply to higher TRLs. I will refer also to this in the next slide. And we are in a situation in which, okay, the product is almost there, but they still need a little bit push to go to the market, and the public entity is the one that is going to give that push. How we choose between these procedures, right? That probably is your doubt now, okay, but how can the contracting authority decide, do I go for a PCP, PPI? Well, basically the reasoning is the technology readiness level of the solution. So with this, I mean, how mature is the solution that I want to buy? So there is already some developments or not? Is already close to deployment or not? And here what you can see is a scale that we use and the European Commission used to measure the technology readiness level of the solutions that are in the market. So this has been developed by the US Defense Department and widely used by NASA in order to determine the maturity of the technologies. And if you see here, so you can see that they're starting at TRL 1, basically when you start observing a concept that is very basic, to a TRL 9, in which you have an actual solution that is working and is ready to go to the market. So we always say that if we have a TRL 3, between 3 and 8, so there is still room, more or less, from research and development, and the most adequate instrument in this case will be a pre-commercial procurement. But if we have a solution that is already quite mature, that has been proven, it has been tested in operational conditions and is ready to go to the market, then we have the public procurement of innovative solutions. Why is it important to use this kind of mechanism? No? Because at the end of the day, what the public entity does with the innovation procurement is to, let's say, foster innovation from the demand side. So I'm buying innovation. If I am a public buyer, I'm buying innovation. And in a way, I'm, let's say, asking the market to be innovative, not to send me or to show me a solution that can tackle my needs in a better way. Of course, this is very interesting for both sides. So basically, for the public buyers, what they want to achieve is to give to the citizens better services. But of course, they also want to save money in a way. And innovation sometimes is perceived as more expensive or more burdensome. But the truth is that if the public buyer has a good business case, of course, at the end, at the beginning, perhaps they have to do a bigger investment because this is how it works. So you have to invest a little bit more than you go to the market and you buy the solution. But in the mid and long term, it pays off because you are having an innovative solution that not only allows you to give this better service, but also allows you to save money, which, well, being pragmatic is what public buyers want at the end of the day. And then for the supply side, and we will see also this in more detail, it has several benefits, and not only the opportunity to access new markets that, for example, are quite fragmented. We can think about the defense market, about the health market. No, that sometimes they're not so easy for startups or small companies to come in, but also give this push that they need to shorten the time of the solution to access the market. And something that is very interesting, I think, and we will discuss later with an example, is to attract investors. So basically, attract funding from venture capital organization or other kind of organization. So at the end of the day, make your company grow. Here is a little explanation of when we use pre-commercial procurement and why and how. So I already talked a little bit about that, but we use pre-commercial procurement when the public buyer has a need, goes to the market, check the solutions that are there and realize that nothing is there. Or there are solutions but at very low technology readiness level. So basically, the rationale of the contracting authority is, okay, if I want a solution to this problem, I have to develop myself. But of course, I may have not the capacity to do that, so I award a contract to the market in order to develop together the solution. And this is very interesting because pre-commercial procurement is very flexible, first of all, because it's not under the scope of the directive that I mentioned before. Usually, you don't follow the traditional, let's say, approach of one contracting authority, one contract, let's say one contract for one supplier. But here, what you can do is award, and I will come back to this because I think it's easier to see. You can see here this part. You award several contracts to several suppliers. And the idea is that these suppliers will be developing the solution in parallel. So basically, we fund not only one company, but more than one, so they can develop the solution. So we start with the phase 1, which is the solution design. We want that the suppliers give us on paper what are their plans for developing the solution. At the end of this phase, we select the successful suppliers based on, of course, some key performance indicators, some objectives that are set up in the tender documents, and some are selected to go to phase 2. In phase 2, basically the idea is to develop a prototype, and the same rationale for phase 3, and the idea is to try this prototype in a real environment to see if it really works or not. Interesting to say that in the case of pre-commercial procurement, the public entity only buys the development of the solution, so research and development services. That means that if once they have this prototype, they want the actual solution, they will have to start a new procedure, which will be the public procurement of innovative solutions. Of course, that doesn't mean that we buy the research and development, or we provide the research and development services, and that's all. No, at the end of the procedure, we have some benefits that are shared between both parties. So why is it interesting for a startup to participate in a pre-commercial procurement? Well, first of all, because all the intellectual property rights that the startup creates or generates during the procurement, as a general rule, will be their own property. So basically, you are in a way funded to develop the solution, but you will be able to commercialize and further explore the solution, and not only able, but sometimes even mandated. And what gets in return the public entity, no? Because at the end, they are putting money. Well, what they get is a license to use that prototype. So that's the general rule. But we have to keep in mind that it's a prototype and it's not a complete solution, let's say. And in the public procurement of innovative solutions, as I say, basically we are buying a product that has a higher TRL. So it's very close to the market, or is already in the market, but let's say not generalized. And of course, it's not perfect for the contracting authority, because perhaps it needs to be integrated with their own systems, or it needs to be adapted in order to satisfy the needs. So it's not like a finalized product for them. This is very interesting because, of course, in this case, we discuss, or we say always that the public entity acts as an early adopter. So what that means? So that means that you have a product that is very close to the market, and they need this final push to access the market. They need, basically, the product needs a buyer, a first buyer, no? Let's say. So the contracting authority as a first buyer, so basically saying, okay, I'm buying the solution, and because I'm a public entity and I'm buying the solution, I give some credibility to the solution in a way. It can be because other contracting authorities may be interested in buying that solution, but also it's a way of telling the market, okay, my solution really works because this contracting authority bought it and is happy, and I have a letter of reference that says that it is a good solution and is working for them. So it's also a way to boost the company. I would like to here give you an example of a successful pre-commercial procurement. And in this case, it's very interesting, and I like it very much because it's a clear example of how a very small company with an innovative idea and through these kind of procedures can grow exponentially. So here we have the case of the company UBD Robots. Perhaps you are already familiar with it. But basically, that is a company that created a self-driving disinfection robot. So how it started? Well, a group of hospitals in Denmark in 2014 say, okay, we need something that allows us to disinfect the rooms in the hospital, but in an autonomous way. Let's say not with workers, but autonomously. They opened a PCP. One of the contractors was Blue Ocean Robotics that creates this kind of robot. And basically that was a self-driving robot that was using UV light system to kill all the bacteria and viruses. So basically this kind of light allows to break the DNA structure and kill them. This was very beneficial from the contracting authority because they could save costs. They could eliminate any errors in terms of rooms that have not been properly cleaned, etc. But it was also very good for the company because actually this company started since 2016, so already at the end of the PCP, receiving money from venture capital organizations. So as you see, they received different boosts of investment. And actually, something happened that it was during the COVID crisis. This product that was already developed way before the COVID was really successful, and people started buying it. So it was very successful in China. Actually, it was implemented in mostly all the regions of the country, but also the European Commission also bought this kind of robots to clean the European hospitals, and the same with other member states. So the idea of this is, okay, we have a small startup. We start receiving funding from capital organizations because our solution that we are developing in the PCP is so promising. And then, of course, well, it happened that COVID came and gave them this amazing opportunity to grow. But from a very innovative and small startup, it grew to one of the European unicorns that is Cohort, now a super successful company. And it also shows us how it's not only benefit PCP in many ways, learning process, developing solutions that probably you're already working in, but even receiving money and funding in order to grow your company. And here we have another example, also from Denmark, is the Aqua Green. So basically the idea was turning wastewater into energy. And also, this procedure helped the company to grow after completing the PCP, So basically, this reference from the contracting authority, this let's say procedure helped them to grow and expand in a very interesting manner. There are many other, of course, but I select these two that, and especially the first one, I think is very clear. We already say a little bit about that, and I want to focus to the other slides. I think they are more interesting for you. Okay, so I guess once you more or less know how is the framework of innovation procurement, and you see that there are some procedures going on, and you want to participate, the first thing that comes to your mind is, okay, but how I can participate, how I know if this is for me or not, if I have the capability. So you can participate in a public tender in different ways. And I would like to start from the pre-tender. So basically, the pre-tender is what we call the preparation of the contract that you can see here in this circle, A public buyer, before launching a tender, and especially if there is an innovative tender, they have to do a lot of homework before. They have to go to the market, they have to check what is in the market, determine the TRL levels that I was mentioning before, engaging with the market through open market consultation, etc. So there are a lot of planning and a lot of activities and a lot of efforts invested in this preparatory phase. And this is the perfect moment for you to start engaging with them, So first of all, I think it's always important to look for opportunities. And then there is always several ways you can do it. I know there are platforms that you can register and they send you opportunities, but you can always sign up to TED, the Tender Electronic Daily. So every big contract, let's say, because of course the European law applies when the contract is over some economic threshold, needs to be published in this platform. So basically the big contract will be there, and then it's an opportunity for you to go and check, You check and say, okay, I'm interested in, mammography, because I'm preparing some specific tools for improving mammography. So then you can check with the keyword or mobility, the same, and then you see the list of tenders that are ongoing, and you may want to participate. And then you have all the information about the conditions, etc. Also, there you can find a prior information notice for open market consultations. I will refer later to what is an open market consultation. But basically, when the contracting authority wants to engage with the market, they usually publish this prior information notice saying, okay, we have this challenge, we are going to open a discussion with the market, and then you know what is going to happen, and you know all the information about the challenge. And of course, at national level, you also have your own platform, the procurement platforms, where all the other contracts, so the big ones, but also the small ones, need to be published. So it's also a way to keep an eye on that and see the opportunities that are coming. As as I say, you can always participate in the open market consultation, and actually it's the perfect moment for you to provide feedback. This is important because, of course, if the contracting authority makes her homework, their homework, and then basically say, okay, this is what we found in the market analysis, and we think that there is room for innovation, but of course we need to cross-check with the market. So that's the opportunity for you to go and say, oh no, that's not correct because my solution can cover your challenge, or yes, that's true. There are these gaps and we can cover it in the future. The other idea of the open market consultations to raise awareness of the industry. So basically inform, okay, we are preparing a tender, so you can expect after this process that in the future upcoming months, a tender will be launched. And then, as I say, the public entity wants to collect as much feedback as possible. So, and this is very important, and it's important for you to participate because it's a way to shape the tender documents, and I will also share some examples with you about that. So how to participate? Well, first of all, get familiar with the procurement challenges that the entity has, and also the OMC document. So sometimes they prepare a document in which they include all the information about the consultation and about the challenge. Participate in the events. So usually there are some events for provider where you can go and give your feedback. Provide feedback in the information, a request for information questionnaire. So it's a good practice that the contracting authority also publishes a questionnaire. And then you can fill this questionnaire and add all your information, of course, in a confidential way, and provide suggestions as well. And take the opportunity to engage in any other way with the public buyer, for example, through pitching sessions or similar events. Well, I'm not going to spend much time in these examples, but what I think is interesting about this is see how the participation of the suppliers in the OMC really shapes the tender, which at the end of the day is what you want, to get, of course, a tender that you can, let's say, with requirements that you can complain, and you can participate. So we have here an example from the Netherlands. So basically, a water company in the Netherlands, water entity, wanted an artificial intelligence system from the water. So basically, the problem they have is that when a pipeline was not working, they didn't know it until it happened, and they wanted to prevent this in advance. And for that, they have different lots, and they did an open market consultation. They did 2 open market consultations, actually. The first, because they wanted to know how the market perceived this challenge and how they can divide it. And then they decided to divide the contract in 3 lots. But then they say, okay, we organize a PPI, Public Procurement of Innovative Solutions, with 3 lots, but something is missing here because we still need, to develop some part concerning to the big data lot. And then they did a second open market consultation, and they realized that in this case, based on the feedback from the market, the best decision was to have another parallel procedure to develop that component, let's say, while they were purchasing the other components. And of course, both of these procedures were linked in terms of ensuring compatibility and ensuring coordination between the contractors. Another example was Impress PCP, that actually this is still ongoing. Basically, this is focus on the development of an interoperable platform for transmission electron microscopy. So all these preparations were done, and then in the open market consultation, we realized that there were different aspects that the market was not able to tackle, or they need more flexibility. So on the basis of this, they adopted several actions. So for example, modification of the number of contractors per phase, because it seems that it was let's say, too demanding to put a minimum. Also, flexibility to participate in one or more consortia, because the market was very fragmented. And that means that, well, perhaps, the challenge was so difficult that one company is essential in more than one consortia, etc. But what I just wanted to show with this is that really the feedback provided during the open market consultation has a real impact on the tender. It's not just like, okay, let's gather feedback to see what's going on. No, it's really affects sometimes the budget, the timeline of the procurement, etc. What about the tender? No, so basically, when you want to submit a tender, the interaction is much more clear. So we are here, we already prepare everything, we launch the tender, and the suppliers submit their bids. How it works in practice? Well, first of all, as I say, we need to ensure the principle of transparency. So the contracting authority publishes a contract notice informing the market about this procurement and all the conditions. Publish several tender documents, and the main one is the call for tenders, when they basically explain the challenge, all the information about how the procurement is going to work, in the case of being awarded a contract, how the performance will be done, how they are going to evaluate the different bids, etc. So basically, all the information is there. And also during this publication phase, they also engage with the market to provide any clarifications that are needed. Then, when you have all the information as a supplier, you decide to submit a tender, and that tender needs to be evaluated by the contracting authority in base of certain criteria that I will mention later, and then the contracting authority will inform to the different suppliers if the bid was successful or not. And then during the execution of the contract, basically the interaction is, of course, very, very intense, especially if we are in a PCP, because we have different phases and the supplier receives constant feedback from the contracting authority about the development of the solution. And of course, we have to deal sometimes with modification of the contract, penalties if we don't comply, etc., and the payments. That's always there. So how is the evaluation of tenders? Well, the first advice we can give you here is read carefully the evaluation criteria and how to prove that criteria, no? Because this is essential. So first we will evaluate the selection criteria and the exclusion criteria. So basically, if you're a suitable company in order to perform the contract. And later we will evaluate the work criteria. So basically, how good is your offer and how well comply with the requirements of the tender. Here you can see now the eligibility criteria. Sometimes we ask that the contract is performed in Europe, others no, it depends on the case. Then we have the exclusion criteria. If you have been convicted for a criminal offense, or you have performed poorly in a previous contract, etc., you may not be reliable enough to participate in this tender. And then you have the selection criteria. So basically, if you have the experience to perform the contract, and if you have the let's say the means to do it, no, if you are economically suitable to perform this contract. And of course, how you prove it, no? Sometimes you can prove it through letters of reference. Not all the time, but it's quite normal that in this kind of procedures, especially when there is a complex, let's say, complex product, no, or solution to be developed or to be purchased, the contracting authority asks for letter of reference. So concerning the performance, concerning the financial situation, for example, a letter from the bank, or also professional reference to ensure that you perform properly in other previous contracts. And here you can see an example, no, for how you can prove it. So if you, for example, are having asked to prove your professional activity, you can fill in a specific form, and it's like a responsible declaration, let's say. Or if you need to demonstrate that your team is good to perform the contract, then you can do it through CVs, etc. It depends on the case, really. This is just an example, but of course you have always a means of proof of your capabilities. And then we have the work criteria. So basically the work criteria, I won't spend much time here, but it's just basically how good is your proposal. The quality of the proposal, the methodology, the ability to tackle the challenge, and of course the price. No, in the case of innovation procurement, here you have some examples of criteria and a score. In the case of innovation procurement, usually the price doesn't have much weight. So it can be 20%, 30%, but we focus more on the quality. And that's great, especially for for the small companies that they can participate because they have really good products, but perhaps they are not so competitive in price, no, compared to big companies. Another interesting option, and this is in the same context, no, is cross-border procurement. So there are certain cases in which contracting authorities from different member states, so for example, one contracting authority in Italy and another in France, they say, okay, we need the same solution, so we want to buy together. And that's what is called cross-border procurement. So they are jointly buying a solution, but also because they are from different member states. From the public and budget perspective, of course, this is very good because they can take the most of the economies of scale, and they can, of course, share the risk with other contracting authorities. But also from the supplier perspective, is quite interesting because you are not coming only in one market, but in more than one market. So you are entering into the Italian market and the French market in this case. And of course, you are having different customers in one contract, which is always very, very interesting. And what about the post-tender, no? The contract implementation. So basically, we already won the tender. We are in the middle of this contract execution. And I think it's interesting always to mention that the obligations of the contract, of course, are in place, especially during the execution of the contract, but also after. Because in the case of innovation procurement, we have to take into account the post-contract management. So basically, intellectual property rights that are involved. So in the case of pre-commercial procurement, almost in every case, we're going to have intellectual property rights, and we need to deal with that, not only during the contract, but also after the contract. During the contract, of course, the contracting authority is going to monitor your performance. So the contract usually includes key performance indications, KPIs, and also some, let's say, milestones that the contractors need to comply with. So, for example, if we are in the PCP, and I think this is the more clear example because we have 3 phases, and these KPIs are going to be essential to determine if you go to the next phase or not. So if you have been successful or just, okay, you perform well, but not so well to go to the next phase. So these, of course, are already clear in advance, but it will be the yardstick that the contracting authority is going to use to measure the performance. In certain cases, the contracting authority can also include value engineering clauses. I'm not going to give a lot of information for time reasons because I want to leave some time for the discussion, but they can also ask you to improve the solution during the performance of the contract. And then commercialization and standard obligation. So in the case of pre-commercial procurement, it's very typical that the contracting authority includes a clause in the contract that say, okay, the suppliers need to commercialize the solution in a certain period of time. So usually it's around 4 years. So you give the market 4 years to commercialize the solution. Otherwise, applies what is called the callback clause, that if you don't do it, the contracting authority can ask for the ownership of intellectual property rights and commercialize the solution itself. Other aspect that we need to take into account during the execution and post-execution, the protection of intellectual property rights. So if you have intellectual property rights, you need to protect them. The new standards and certification. So it's very normal that during the contract performance, you are required to actively participate in the design of new standards or new kind of models of certification. And sometimes you also have royalties and licensing schemes. So basically, money that you need to pay to the contracting authority, like sharing the benefits, we'll say, or giving them a license so they can use the solution. To finalize, I would like to make a reference to an initiative that may be interesting for you, which is called the Spin for AIC. So Spin for AIC is an initiative from SMEA, from the European Commission. Basically, the idea of this is twofold, let's say. We have a part of support to public buyers that I haven't included here because probably it's not interesting for you. And then we have the support to beneficiaries. So basically, this initiative also supports beneficiaries that want to prepare a bid or want in any way to participate in an innovation procurement procedure. It can be from the public sector or from the private sector, and in and outside Europe. The only restriction that it has, this program, is that it's restricted to EIC beneficiaries. So if you are an EIC beneficiary, it's a great opportunity for you to get involved in this initiative. If you are not, unfortunately, right now it's just restricted to this kind of companies. However, I think it's interesting to mention that we are delivering, I say we, because also Corvers is partner of this project together with, you see, Deloitte, Intelera Consulting, ICLEI, etc. We are preparing a toolkit for suppliers. So basically a guidance on how to interact with the public and private sector when you want to bid, and basically following the same steps that I told you before, but much more in detail, of course, with checklists, recommendations, etc. And this is open for everybody. So this will be published, let's say, in chapters. So one chapter is almost ready to be published, and then another will come. And each of them try to give you an idea and help in order to prepare your bid and participate in this kind of procedures. So I think you should stay tuned because it will come soon. Okay, and the key takeaways. Well, as I said, it's important to stay tuned of what's going on. So I will invite you to register to the TED platform and receive any updates on procurement. Most probably you have already done it, but otherwise it's always good to keep in mind. Take into account the common procurement vocabulary code, so basically the keywords that you need in order to select which tenders are more interesting for your business. Provide your feedback always when you can during the preparation of the contract, because as I say, and I'm sorry if I repeat myself, but I think it's so important to understand that this can have a major effect in the preparation of the tender and in the future tender. Read always carefully the tender documents and of course, check which kind of requirement you have to comply with. And consider the obligations that you need to comply with during the contract performance, and always the post-contractual obligations. Have a look at that. And of course, share your lessons learned, because that's always very important for other companies and other public entities to keep learning. So thank you for your time. I see I took some minutes more than I should. I'm sorry for that. I hope you found it useful and it clarifies some of your doubts. Otherwise, I'm always very happy to address them now during the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Beatriz. And yeah, of course, there was a lot of useful information. And also thank you for presenting the program and that you presented in the last part, because the startups are actually preparing for being accepted to the EAC Accelerator during our program. So maybe it will be useful for as many of them as possible. So yeah, hopefully it would work. And also we have a question or two, actually. First one was from Microfi team. If we have just been funded by InnoBuyer, can we also apply to SPIN for EAC to ask for help in this InnoBuyer project? Or it's just EAC?
Can you say it again? Sorry.
Yes. They say that they have just been funded by the InnoBuyer. So can they also apply to the SPIN for EAC to ask for help in this InnoBuyer project?
Well, that's a tricky question. I mean, we will have to check the specific conditions. So please feel free to send an email to us and we can discuss it further. Because what we have to check here, and it's important, is that there is no double funding, let's say. So we will have to check if the activities covered by InnoBuyer are different than the one we can cover in SPIN for EAC, because perhaps it is, and then you can benefit from both initiatives. So I would suggest please contact us, contact me or any of my colleagues of SPIN for EAC, and then we will check for you, if it's possible to receive assistance or not.
Okay, thank you. I'll do.
Thank you. And the second question is from Grinder team. Thanks a lot for your presentation. And could you mention how much time usually takes the presentation of the innovative procurement? Is there usually a lot of competition in phase one? What about the success rate? Also, how much time it usually takes the evaluation of vendors?
Okay. So thank you for your question, very interesting. So I think you're referring particularly to pre-commercial procurement because you talk about the different phases. So, well, the timing depends a bit on, of course, on the solution or the product you want to develop. So usually, starting from the beginning, the preparatory phase usually takes a bit of time. So we can think about even close to 8 months, 1 year. So it's reasonable because you engage with the market and you prepare the technical specifications. So it's quite long for the contracting authority. Then they usually launch the tender. And then we allow the companies a minimum of 2-3 months to prepare the tender. So you can say that from the beginning until the evaluation or there is a decision on the award of the contract, 5 months, let's say, or something like that. But again, it depends on the case. But just to give you an idea. Then phase one, usually phase one, because it's development of the solution on paper, is relatively short. So depending on the project, we have projects in which is 3 months, other projects in which is 6 months, but never more than 6 months. So we always around 4 or 5 months, 6 months maximum, because at the end of the day, it's the presentation of a project on paper. Second phase is the development of a prototype, so that needs more time. There are also sometimes involved proof of concept in the lab conditions or control conditions. So we usually here talk about 9, 10 months, 1 year. And phase 3, which is the phase basically of demonstration or validation of the solution, in which you have a prototype that is ready to be, let's say, testing in operational conditions or practical conditions, more or less is the same duration that phase 2, sometimes a little bit less. Sometimes it can be the same if you have to do, let's say, some adjustment to the prototype based on the result of phase 2. So it's difficult to give like, let's say, close number because it depends a lot. But yeah, basically, perhaps we are a minimum of 2 years, let's say. I would say all together with the different phases. And then also you are very right when you mentioned that between the different phases, we have also some time, let's say, no? Because to give you an idea how it works, if we have in the phase 1 5 contractors, imagine, and then we have to select a minimum of 3 to the next phase. It will depend, of course, on the budget. So at the end of the phase, the contracting authority has to evaluate the performance of the different suppliers and say, okay, you didn't perform well, so perhaps you don't get paid in full. That's a bad situation. You perform well, but not as well as expected. So of course you will get paid. So you always get paid for your work, but you're not invited to the next phase. Or your performance is successful. That means that, yeah, promising, you will be invited for the next phase. And then after that, you have to submit another tender, another bid. But then it's not like the first bid, because of course it's a much more concise bid based on your proposal for phase 2. And you're only competing with the companies that are already in the procedure. Not new companies can come at this point. And then the same happened with phase 2. So a minimum of 3 providers is the ideal. And then for phase 3, we will have a minimum of 2. So that's the ideal situation. Of course, then a lot of things can happen. Probably only one supplier can reach the last phase, etc. And then we have to wait between phases, let's say this time, which can be 1 month, a little bit more, because we have to receive the bids, we have to evaluate, and then start the phase. I don't know if I think I tackle everything. Please, Denisa, let me
Thank you for
anything in the question.
No, now, yeah, they responded that it's fine, and yeah, they understood everything, and thank you for the answer. And we do not have any other questions in the chat, but I would like to ask Naomi, who sent some questions beforehand, if she wants still to address any of them and if they're still relevant for her, or should I address any of it? So Naomi, if you are still with us and you can hear us from Astrotech. I'm not sure, but if you can hear us, Naomi, you can step in. I think from what I mentioned to double check regarding the questions, One would be maybe relevant still, and it's how can we, the startup, build long-term relationship with public sector clients? Are there any specific contracting frameworks or partnerships that are more favorable for small companies with innovative solutions?
Okay. Yeah, thank you for the question. It is indeed very relevant. And I think pre-commercial procurement is one of the best instruments right now for innovative startups and small companies. The reason is because of the main barrier, no? And I think you will relate to that perhaps, that the small companies have when they want to apply for a public contract is the selection criteria. So basically the requirements in terms of previous performance, financial means, technical capability, they are so high that they cannot really comply with them, so they don't have a chance. And, we are thinking, we have examples now of some innovative companies that are 1 person or 2 persons, or maximum 3 persons that are working there. So yeah, you cannot really comply with certain requirements. But the good thing about PCP is that because it all involves the development of the solution, basically the requirements that they're gonna ask for in the tender documents are much lower, so are much more easy for these companies to comply with. And of course, because it has different phases, as I mentioned before, and the requirements grow from phase to phase, it's also a way for the company to grow along with the contract, let's say, no? Because of course, the participation in this procurement is also giving you more tools, more experience that you can prove in the next contract. So that I would say is a very good one because it's very flexible. And it's also a good way to build a partnership, as you say, because you start with the development, but after that, most probably, if everything goes according to the plan, we will have a follow-up procurement to buy a solution, and you will be ready to tender also for that procurement. Even in certain cases, it's possible that your solution is so unique, let's say that only you can provide that solution for technical reasons. And then the fact that you participate in this procurement obviously can open the door to do a one-to-one procurement in certain cases. Mm-hmm. Then we have, of course, another instrument which probably you heard about, which is the innovation partnership, which is a kind of a partnership that includes the development and the deployment of the solution. So this is good if the contracting authority knows already that it's gonna develop the solution and for sure regardless by the solution. But it's not so good for the small companies because the requirements to join the procurement is gonna be, okay, you are able to develop and deploy already at this stage. So usually it's much more convenient for big companies that have already good capabilities, but not for the small one. And another procedure that I think it may be interesting, I didn't mention here because it's very specific, but it can be also interesting for small companies, is the design contest. So there are certain cases, but this is very narrow because it's only for public services, in which the contracting authority decides to open a contest. So a competition basically of ideas in which innovative startups or other kind of companies, but also them can submit their ideas and suggest a plan of action. And then as a follow-up, it's possible for the contracting authority to just award the contract to that, let's say, winner, no? The winner of the competition. So that's also a good way to get a contract and with low requirements, let's say. I hope that answered the question.
Yes, I have way too many questions because I already contacted Denisa Rier before the call. So one thing, I have too many questions for right now because I already started another meeting, so I will be jumping off. But one question that still I think is most important for me is how about going for those calls together, like in collaboration, research collaboration, another company collaboration, or whatever it is. Is it what is seen better, if I may ask like that? Is it like one, let's say, small startup that is trying to get some call, or to do it within a partnership?
Well, that's a very good question. I think it depends on your capabilities, basically. I don't think something is better than the other. Both options are good, and the contracting authority only cares that you can comply with the requirements and perform the contract successfully. So if you have the capability to go by yourself and your team is enough and you have the financial reliability, you can go ahead. You have the, also the effort, and you can dedicate the effort. But there are certain cases in which the solution is so specific that you can perhaps cover most of it, but not all of it, or you can cover only one part. And then in that case, it's great that you look for partners, form a consortium, and participate together. And in a lot of European projects that are preparing PCPs or they are already launching PCPs, there is the so-called matchmaking tool, which basically try to facilitate this, to say, okay, I am a company, I can cover this part of the challenge, but I'm lacking this capacity, and then connect you with other companies. So
yes, I was using those.
Exactly. I don't think there is a better way than the other. So it's what you can do and what fits you better.
Okay, yeah. Okay, thank you. And I really have to go. So if I may, I will connect you with the rest of my questions.
Of course.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
I think we are also over time with this session, so I want to be mindful with Beatriz time for this. So if anyone else has a question, maybe to address it to her directly and discuss if needed, and if you have any specific situation, let's say. So thank you very much, Beatriz, for your time, for accepting our invitation again, and we hope to see you maybe in another event, or I don't know, another circumstance in the future. So thank you again.
Thank you all for participating, and thank you for the invitation, of course.
Thank you. Have a great day ahead.
You too. Bye.
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 Thank you very much.
Bye.